Hi everyone, Miss Adams here. It's the day before your Literature Paper 1 exam and I just wanted to come and say massive good luck and just give you a couple of last minute reminders, last minute tips for sitting this exam. This is the Edexcel Literature Paper 1. So as you know, the exam is split into two sections, and in your first section, you're tackling Shakespeare. You have two questions. Make sure you do both. I know that sounds obvious, but I have had the odd student that has forgotten to do the second question. So, two questions to tackle. The first one is an extract. The most important thing to remember here is that the only thing you're being assessed on in that extract, whether it's Macbeth or Romeo and Juliet or whatever it is analysis. Your analysis of language, structure and form. So everything that you're doing, you should be thinking about how is Shakespeare presenting these ideas, okay? So you want to see lots of critical terminology in your response. If you can comment on form, even better. Like, for example, if it's a soliloquy, comment on the fact that it's a soliloquy. Look at the rhyming couplet at the end of it, because most soliloquies do end with a rhyming couplet. If the scene moves from blank verse into prose, comment on it. Say why Shakespeare has done that, okay? Now, when you're working your way through the extract, it's really important that you focus yourself on that question. So if the question says, how does Shakespeare present Macbeth's thoughts and feelings in this extract? Well, the first thing you need to do is isolate. What's he thinking? What's he feeling? That's what goes into your topic sentence, okay? And then the rest of your paragraph, you're squeezing everything you can out of your quotes, okay? So, analysis only. That's worth 20 marks. The next question, also worth 20 marks. So you should spend about the same amount of time. They don't give you much, 27.5 minutes per question, but just do what you can. Next question is, of course, the wider. Now, it is vitally important that you do not touch that extract. They will not give you any marks for any comments driven by that extract, okay? So you've got to go elsewhere. This one does have context, worth 5 marks out of your potential 20, so it's worth 25%. My advice, set up your tiny introduction, okay? If, why the theme is important, because it's always a theme they give you, and then sit it within some context. So for example, if you got a question on kingship, as your theme, then your context might, your introduction might refer to the divine right of kings as your kind of starting point. Now in this one, you're only being assessed on AO1 and that AO3 for context, no analysis needed. However, you do still need to have a critical style. So there is absolutely nothing wrong with you drawing attention to any patterns that you see across the play, or thinking about how something might be being foreshadowed, or it might be a recurring motif, or it might be some symbolism, but you don't need to get into the adjective this suggests X, Y, and Z, okay? But don't forget that context integrated throughout your response. So once you've had your 55 minutes on section A for Shakespeare, then you're moving on to section B, and this is the prose or drama from 1914. So you might be answering on Animal Farm, or Lord of the Flies, or An Inspector Calls, or Blood Brothers, any of those, Journey's End, those kinds of ones. Okay, so you've only got one question here, but you do get a choice of two. Only do one. This question is somewhat like the Shakespeare section, part B, sorry, because again, you're not analysing. You're only being assessed, on AO1, so your knowledge and understanding of the text, your ideas, and your textual references. AO3, the context, and you have 8 marks for SPAG. And that 8 marks can actually be the difference between a grade. So if you're someone who sometimes forgets the odd capital letter, not because you don't know how to use them, but just because you've got in the habit of being informal, be really, really careful. Double check all the way through. Things like spelling your author names right, Priestley or Golding, don't misspell their names. And just check your work through regularly as you go. I'd recommend that you check through every paragraph because your brain will be more kind of in tune. And if you do make mistakes, then your second paragraph, you're less likely to make them again. Now, a little word on context. Just like with the Shakespeare, I would suggest that you start with a tiny bit in your introduction, okay? And then the majority of your paragraphs, there should be some context integrated through it. Now, most students are taught, and quite rightly, because it's a good way of making sure you don't forget, that you write in like a peel paragraph format. So you go point, evidence, explain, link to context. That's great. If that's what makes you feel good and comfortable, you stick with it. But what I want you to really think about is not accidentally just like tacking on context at the very end, almost like an afterthought. So this is because Priestley was socialist. This is because Golding went to war. You need to use your context to kind of like develop your ideas. So there's nothing wrong with starting a paragraph with a bit of context and looking at how it's influenced the work, or using context in the middle of a paragraph to kind of explain why something has been written that way. But it is worth 16 marks out of 40, so it should be in the majority of your paragraphs. Trying to think if there's anything else I need to say. Check through your work, know your assessment objectives. Oh, quotes. This is what I wanted to say. So obviously, yes, this is a closed book exam, so you need to have your quotes. You need to have them ready to go. There is nothing wrong with teeny tiny quotes, right? So if you can't remember a big, long quote, but you can remember bits of it, paraphrase and drop in, that's fine. If you can't remember any quotes at all, right? If your mind goes blank, well, paraphrase what happens in the text, but be really careful when you do that to use the author's name frequently so you don't end up just telling the story. So there's a really big difference between then Jack punches Piggy and Piggy falls over, right? To Golding creates a moment of violence where Jack punches Piggy. Golding intends to demonstrate how killing the pig has given Jack a freedom that allows him to commit violence towards another human, escalating the violence in the boys. Do you see the difference? So keep everything focused on what the writer is intending to stop you from just narratively telling a story. Right, I do think that's it from me now. I think that's all. Okay, massive good luck. If you need any additional support, I'm so sorry that I don't have everything. I don't have all of the exams, but I do have some useful character and theme stuff on Macbeth. I've got some scene by scene stuff on Romeo and Juliet. So if you just want to brush up on some scenes or just to practice your extract, you can have a look at that. I've got character stuff and Inspector Calls. I've got character stuff and the odd theme bit in Lord of the Flies. So do go and have a little look around, and feel free to give me a shout and ask me any questions. I'll try my best to come back to you, but today is crazy day because day before the exam and I've got back-to-back private tutoring. So give me a shout, I'll try. Right, that's it from me. Thank you so much for watching. Happy revising for the last time for paper 1, and a massive good luck.